Hey, everybody. I recorded this podcast and then I had a funny feeling, which I normally don't do. I normally kind of just record these podcasts and trust that whatever wanted to come out came out. But with the last one, I just had a funny feeling. I was like, something went wrong there. Maybe I wasn't fully in place. Maybe my brain and my heart weren't connected. But either way, either way, I'm back to do it again. And what I want to talk about in this episode is really what's wrong with us. I mean, all of these episodes are kind of talking about what's wrong with us. And again, I just sort of want to clarify when I say what's wrong with us, I don't want this to be a compoundment of the shame, but really just sort of what we're not doing skillfully, right? In the same way that if you were a car owner and you came in and I would say, well, what's wrong with your car is you haven't put oil in it. What's wrong with your car is you've been driving it in reverse the whole time. So that's really what, when I talk about healing from Irishness, I think a better way for me to describe it would be a more skillful way of being Irish. Because there are certain things that we're doing that we don't have to do. And this would make everything so much better for us. So it's about this whole podcast is about helping you to see the things that you don't have to do. Um, that have to is very interesting because the have to part of our thought process speaks to the huge sense of obligation that we have as people. I think to a certain extent, being Irish means we feel that there is something that we have to do. There is something that has to be done. It's like being born with a job, a little bit. You know how I hope none of you have done it or were it, but perhaps. But when a child is born as a kind of a relationship saver, it's born with a job. When the parents decide that, oh, we'll have this kid in order to make things better. I often think that was my position in my family. I was the second child. And at that stage, my parents had been together 4 years and had my sister. And I think everyone would have realized how incompatible and difficult the relationship was at that stage. But maybe they imagined in their wisdom that having me would make things better. Little did they know that I would grow up to be the little shit who kept on pointing out everything that was wrong and dysfunctional and incoherent in my family. But you can't, you can't exactly, you can only wish for the children that you want. You can't order them directly like Amazon. So, what I want to talk about here is what is actually wrong with us, right? And what is actually wrong with us, Irish people, is that we are loaded. We come loaded with a certain bundle of thoughts. It's very similar to when you say, buy a mobile phone, and that mobile phone comes preloaded with a certain amount of apps. And whatever you've got, like, for some reason, you've got like stocks on there, or you've got like some weather widget, or you've got like if you're using iOS, like you've got their maps, which is shite. And these things just come with your phone. Um, and you don't really have a say in it. And that's very much how it is to be Irish. We were born, and there's certain things that come with us, and we don't really have a say in it. We just realize, oh, these are the things that I have. Now, other people who come from different places, they have the similar but different thought fields, thought categories that they are born with. I've had the pleasure, I've had the privilege, and I think a lot of the people who listen to this podcast don't live in Ireland. And when you are kind of the only Irish person in a group, when you're the only Irish person at the table, when you're the only Irish person in a relationship with a non-Irish person, you really begin to see, I have very different thought categories than this person. It's not that they're wrong. It's not that they're right. It's not that you're wrong. It's not that you're right. It's just your script is different to theirs. And this is how it is. We have different scripts. Um, the work for Irish people is really to recognize your script. It's that old expression, know thyself. The way we heal from Irish is to know thyself, to really know yourself. And then once you know yourself, I mean, another way to describe knowing yourself is just to observe yourself. Become aware of what's going on with you. Because when you can become aware of what's going on, then you get the capacity to choose. For so many of us Irish people, we don't realize that you can delete these apps. We don't realize that there is a hack. There are techniques that allow us to just get rid of these apps, this programming, this conditioning. So today I kind of want to talk about what the conditioning is. I'm going to break it down into 6 categories basically. And in this way, just kind of give you a sense of what is actually wrong with you. And I think it's important to realize too that like all of this can be worked on. You are not doomed by your Irishness. You are certainly not doomed by your thoughts. I Most of the work that I have done in terms of like my journeys with psychedelics, my journeys with meditation, has been all about trying to disrupt, and it's a very techy term, but yeah, disrupt my relationship with my thoughts. Because when you can recognize that you are not your thoughts are just the apps that have been pre programmed on you, the phone. Um, and when you realize that and you realize, oh, I don't have to work with these. I can do something else. I can choose to ignore them. You can go one step further. You can choose to replace them. And yeah, that's the kind of thing that I would love to offer you and remind you today that you can choose different thoughts. There are techniques. I know I had quite severe depression when I was about 20. It kind of, I think it was lingering for a long time. And then my best friend committed suicide. It was a very difficult situation. My best friend, he committed suicide and he told me about it the day before he did it. Not in direct terms, but I remember we were sitting in a pub called the Thing Moat on Suffolk Street and we were talking about suicide. And we were drinking pints and talking about suicide. And we were talking about the best ways that we would do it. Quite a morbid conversation, but I didn't feel, I mean, there was no mental health language around here at this time. This was it was maybe 2001. Didn't have the language for this. So I never thought he would commit suicide. But lit, afterwards, I realized that we were having a conversation which was planning his suicide. Um, Yeah, and my friend Kevin then went and he drowned himself in the Liffey that night, and I found out about it 2 days later. And I had what felt like a nervous breakdown. And I went to a doctor, the doctor who prescribed me with Prozac, and which I never took. I instead, and I kind of, when I look back at my younger self, and I look back at the grace that seemed to always surround me in these difficult times. What happened instead is more or less in that same period, I met, I was working as a school teacher, teaching Italian students. And one of the supervisors of the Italian students, um, I met her and we had a quick romance. And she invited me to move to Italy. And instead of taking Prozac, I moved to Italy. And that didn't get rid of all my problems, but it delayed them for a while until I could come back to them again. But the thing that was bothering me was my thoughts. I was stuck in deep, deep negative thinking and I couldn't get out of them. And this is what I want to talk about today because this is the problem with Irish people. And number one, and this is something that kind of I noticed in that moment after my friend died, is we have so much emotional suppression. We have so much difficulty expressing things. It was even interesting. I went to the doctor. The doctor didn't even bring me down. It didn't bring me into emotions. I went to him and I said, I've been depressed since my friend committed suicide. And his response was, do you feel suicidal too? And I said, I don't know, potentially. And then he gave me medication. There was very little there was very little aftercare. There was very little there was no somatics in this time. No, he couldn't say, hey, where do you feel the depression in your body? We didn't have this. This emotional suppression is so huge in us. I remember it. And it's also why the problem with this is when we emotionally suppress is those emotions are kind of like rockets. They need to be lit. You need to set fire to them. They need to exit your body at some level. They exit your body through feeling them, through expressing them. If they don't exit your body, they completely turn on you. For me, what happened with the emotional suppression of the death of my friend is that I moved to Italy, and within about 3 months of living in Italy, I developed an eating disorder. I remember it being I felt like the most cruel thing in the world. I had no problem eating. I could eat on my own. But if I was ever eating in public and I felt that eyes were on me, if attention was on me, it made me nauseous. And if any of you have lived in Italy, you know that the number one activity in Italy is eating with others. That's all they do. Italians are always going to eat with other people. And I spent a year in Italy avoiding eating with other people, which left me feeling very lonely, very miserable, and full of a lot of shame. So, this is what we do. We emotionally suppress, and those emotions, because the emotion has an objective, it wants to it wants to erupt, it wants to do something. We emotionally suppress, and so the emotion stays in our body and it turns on our bodies. Most of our illnesses are just emotions that are trapped inside our body. You have to let them out. The other thing we do is self abandonment. This is the huge thing. We come with this. So we have guilt for having needs. So as you all know, I live in Mallorca and I live in it in the summertime and springtime and autumn, like the street where I live on is full of tourists. And you hear Irish tourists all the time, and I love because I don't have a lot of Irish friends out here and I miss Irish people. I'll walk up behind them and eavesdrop. I'll do I'll do that. I'll eavesdrop on them as they're walking down the little laneways here and stuff. And the conversations are always, "Sure, I don't mind, whatever you wanna do," or "I'm easy." Whatever you "No, no, sure, will you we'll go there first if that's what you wanna do." It's Irish people really refusing to have a need, bending over themselves, bending over backwards to let somebody else prioritize. Because this feeling that if I have a need or if I have a want, then I'll be guilty. I notice this, it shows up in my life so much. I grew up definitely with this sort of pattern, this identity that to be loved and to be loved by my family, the best way to do that would be to have no needs. I remember Christmas. We would always do this thing on Christmas Eve, we'd drive up for the day. And and we did it mostly for two things. One, my dad loved walking down Grafton Street on Christmas Eve and he loved listening to the buskers. And my sister wanted to go shopping. And my mother and I, because I inherited the pattern from her, our whole vibe would be, oh, we'll just do whatever everybody else wants to do. And so my mother would be there, okay, and would like run like a blue-assed fly from Capel Street back to Stephen's Green Shopping Centre to Temple Bar with my sister, just looking for the exact pair of docks that my sister wanted. And it always felt like it was kind of like the importance that was attached to this was the same importance as you might attach to like finding a kidney donor. It was like that as we ran through the city, all of us together. And and I would always sort of in order to support my mother, but really like my strategy was to be loved by my mother. I would always say, "Oh, mom, I don't need anything. No, 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 should I don't want anything. I don't want anything for Christmas." And I would self-abandon over and over again. And as a child, maybe that looked cute, but as an older person growing up, that self-abandonment, what it ultimately did for me is it left me feeling like I was a stranger to myself. I remember hitting a point in my late 30s and just going, I don't have a fucking clue what I want in life. I don't know what I want in life. I don't know how to please myself at so many levels, even sexually. My whole relationship with sex was self-abandonment. I would have sex with someone so they liked it. It had very little to do with whether I was getting something from it. What I got from it was a sense of safety that they were enjoying themselves. Same thing when it came to like consuming, you know? I found it so hard to buy myself things. I often felt that my life, because it was so difficult for me to supply my own wants, my life, whenever I was out of a relationship, would go on pause. I wouldn't take care of my home. I wouldn't decorate. But the minute a partner would come in and would suggest things, or I would start to like design a home for them. Self-abandonment. Irish people were dripping in it. And number three, hyper responsibility. And this is very much connected to self-abandonment, but it's this thing where at one level, we're terrified of doing something wrong. We're always scared that we've done something wrong or that we've disappointed others. I think we all know that experience, and alcohol certainly doesn't help. But I remember, God, like coming home so many nights and lying in bed and replaying all the shitty jokes I'd made, all the stupid things I'd said, and just absolutely torturing myself. The fear that I've done something wrong, the fear that I've disappointed others. I know it's just after Christmas. I don't go home for Christmas anymore. I typically spend quiet Christmases with different groups of people. I like to cook on Christmas Day, and wherever I'm living at the time, I'll just invite other folks home who don't have other places to go. I love it. It works for me. But in the early years when I was trying to get out of Christmases because I always found them so emotionally challenging, the fear I had of disappointing people was terrible. I'd always end up booking a last minute flight on the 22nd or the 23rd just because I couldn't abide the guilt. We have this responsibility, this deep responsibility. We go into caretaker mode. It's a very Irish thing. And number four in this list of all things that are wrong with us is this huge conflict avoidance that we have. We don't speak directly. We're hyper vigilant around other people's moods. Probably the toughest lesson I've ever had to learn in relationship was to let my partner be in a bad mood and not do anything about it. Let them sit there stewing, pissed off, upset, angry, and just abide by me. This doesn't mean I'm switching off, but it just means you, you can kind of come back to this lovely Polish expression, not my circus and not my monkeys. You know? You just allow the person to go through their cycle. Let them move through whatever little spiral they want to move through. And it's not your job to fix them. This is a big thing with us Irish people. We feel this hypervigilance. I notice it myself that I'll have like nervous, or not so much now, but I've had nervous system spikes in angry situations. I don't know how I managed working in bars for so long where there was fights spilling out all the time. I think I was always on edge, always chewing my nails, always smoking fags, always eating like chocolate bars, stress eating chocolate bars, throwing a Mars into you in like 2 bites just to sort of calm the nerves. And there's a fear of conflict in all of this huge fear of direct communication and conflict. And what it does is it just makes us very disempowered. If you're scared of conflict, how are you ever going to stick up for yourself? How are you ever going to get what you want? Now, this kind of connects to number five, which is just our relationship with discomfort. We kind of feel guilty or undeserving of rest or pleasure. Don't know if you've ever done this, but how often have you kind of not sugar coated your stories, but crop coated your stories? Oh, we just got a new house. Oh, but sure, there's going to be so much work to do. Or, oh, you had a nice holiday. Oh, but the flight was terrible. You know what I mean? Where you kind of, we're afraid. We're afraid to appear like it's been too good. We're afraid to appear like we have it easy. Um, it's also this fascination with being busy. This comes from this too. You know, I often say this. It's why we're considered such great workers when we go abroad, is because we're so much more comfortable being discomfortable, uncomfortable. And this is why we push ourselves in workplaces. You know, this is also connected to the shame that we have, the shame that would make us feel we have to do 150% compared to others, right? There's also a kind of a distrust of calm or peace. It's what makes Irish people such great capitalists. We're so focused on growth. We're so focused on progress. This ambition that we have, it's not coming from a place of artistic expansion. It's often just coming from a place of, I need more because I feel less. We don't rest. And this affects our bodies tremendously. And the last thing I want to talk about, number six here in this list of things that are wrong with Irish people, is just how we normalize dysfunction. We're dysfunctional with ourselves. Our connection with ourselves is so dysfunctional that we just normalize it in others. We accept it in others. We go into relationships that are just fraught with red flags, and that's fine. We attract chaos and emotional unpredictability. We're good with that. We're resilient. I used to always think that about myself, that I came into my own in a crisis. When there wasn't a crisis, I felt a little bit like I was deactivated, like I'd been switched off. And so I'd call into my life always friends who were addicts, alcoholics, you know, losing their jobs all the time, needing money, getting into fights, in trouble with the police, relationships that were similar, because I felt more familiar with uncomfortable situations, chaotic situations. And what this also does is it ends up, we begin to normalize, as Irish people, we normalize low expectations. We don't really expect a lot from life. We're happy like to just have a reasonably okay life, a reasonably okay relationship. We're okay to not have our needs met. This is tragic. It's deeply tragic. We all deserve to have phenomenal lives where we follow out our dreams, where we really experience real love and real connection, where we encounter awe and wonder, where we lay down after our fourscore and 20 years or fourscore and 10 years and go, "Ah, I squeezed the juice from that fruit." And the problem with all of this, you know, when I talk about these things, the the problems that we have, they're all rooted in our thoughts. All of our problems begin in the form of a thought. You know that it's thoughts that govern the Irish people. It's thoughts that govern us because these thoughts appear, these thoughts that we are not choosing, but we are conditioned with, and they're happening. They're just appearing to us automatically. Sorry, not that we're not choosing them, but it feels like we are so enmeshed with our thoughts that that's what just happens. They're just happening and we're trusting them. We're picking up on them. Our work as Irish people, our work as all people, is to divest from these negative thought fields that we've come pre-programmed with. The low worth, low value life, the the guilt, the responsibility, the fears, the suppression. All of this is just rooted in thought forms. And our work, and it's very, very possible, I'll tell you that, it's hugely possible, is to begin to just create distance between you and these thoughts. And the more you can create distance, the more you can kind of question each thought and go, is this true? Is this beneficial? Do I actually want this? The more you can develop this technique, the more you can develop this skill of distance, of observation, of not being the thinker, but more the watcher of thoughts. And as you develop this, the thoughts distance themselves from you. And instead, what you're left with is this empty space. And this empty space is your essence. And when you connect with your essence, you realize, whatever I bring my attention to appears in material reality. Now, when I say material reality, what I'm talking about is everything outside your senses, what you hear, touch, taste, see. That's material reality. And when we can reduce our addiction to thinking, we begin to see, oh, I'm actually the factory of material reality. What I bring my attention to then shows up in material reality. If you have a miserable life, the reason you have a miserable life is because you are believing thoughts that are creating misery. Your way to work with this is to divest from that way of thinking and begin to choose new realities. So this episode, it's a list of what's wrong with us, but it's also a plug because I'm doing a course in February. And this course is all about your attention. Your attention is what creates reality. The course is called 28 Days. And every single day in the month of February, we're going to meditate and look at what we're paying attention to. It's going to run for about half an hour every day. You can do it live with me if you're over in Europe, or you can just pick up the recorded session whenever you wake up in your day. And over these 28 days, what I'm going to teach you is really how to have mastery over your reality. I got to say, life is truly, truly wonderful when you have this mastery. When you know, and when I wake up in the morning and I realize I'm like riddled with thoughts, and I go, I'm not going to respond to them. I'm going to divest from them. I'm going to observe them, and I'm going to come back to that neutral place. And from there, I'm going to choose. When you can choose reality, life becomes a beautiful game. It becomes such an adventure rather than this drudgery that we have to just go through, that we have to struggle through. So if you want to join me for this course, I'm going to put a link below. There's a hefty discount if you're a member of my Patreon. So you might want to consider that too. And that's it. That's the episode. I made it not with the idea in mind to kind of make you feel bad or anything, but just the more you can bring to light what's wrong with us, the more you can really sort of see, this is what's wrong with us. This is what's going on. It's not me on my own. Collectively, we have this. The more you can begin to explore that and see it, and then develop techniques to pick it apart, to change. There is a beautiful life ahead of you. and you deserve it. We all deserve it, and we're very capable of having it. So that's it, everyone. My books are open this month again if you want to do a one-on-one session. And then in February, I'll be working on this course. But sending you beautiful greetings for the new year. Thanks for continuing to listen. Slán. The day's warming up, so I think I'll go out into the sun. Love you. Bye bye.